Hi, this is Brennan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and we're on the final day of the 12 years of Fistmas that we began oh so long ago in honor of Joel's Lone Wolf Fist game and his various products. And today we're going to be doing Swordsman Ii. Before I do that, I want to give you like 30 seconds today, just because I know we're a little shorter for time, but just if there's something you want to advocate for or promote, let us know. And
sure. Yeah. And this is interesting because not only have we already covered this movie before, you and I, we covered it. This is almost exactly the anniversary of us covering it. It was in March. It was March 18th is when we first covered this one in 2018. So yeah, this is actually kind of a red letter day. It's like
almost 6 years ago now, isn't it?
Yep, and wow. that was the last time we did it. So I looked it up before we started. I'm interested. I'm going to listen to both of them back to back and see how little I agree with my previous points. But yeah,
by the way, that will happen a lot. You will have an opinion of a movie because I've been doing this long enough now to know. And then 5 years later, sometimes 2 years later, you have a completely different opinion, and it's that's just the way it is.
I know. I kind of love that, though. It sort of puts the lie to the consistency of us as human beings. But they say that a man never steps into a river twice. This is not the same river, and he's not the same man. So, and there's never been a movie that makes that more clear than this movie. But I think I was promoting All Above Heaven, which was my cosmic kung fu version of Lone Wolf Fist. And I would like to point out that game isn't on indefinite hiatus. It's actually what's going to happen right after Acid and Steel, which is our next one. So I do want to do a quick shout out for Acid and Steel. That's our next Kickstarter coming up. I just got the cover returned, so I'm super fired up to finish the writing on it. It's going to be demons and robots in the post-apocalypse, fully compatible with Lone Wolf Fist. And it's going to be the bridge. It's literally like both the cosmic, the mythologically, and the scientifically like cosmic stepping stone between the post-apocalypse glory of Lone Wolf Fist and the high-flying Shansha kung fu action of All Above Heaven. So get ready for 6 more years of absolute fisty goodness, folks.
So a quick follow-up question too before we move the movie. So wait, are you saying this is like you said, compatible? Does that mean this is a separate game, or is this a supplement? I had the feeling this was a supplement.
It's 100% a supplement, but like,
okay,
I'm getting when I go to All Above Heaven, I might, because the scale of that game is ludicrous. Like, it's insane on the level that Shansha is from Wuxia, which is, if you've ever read a Wuxia or seen any Wuxia media, like this one's a very Wuxia story that we're talking about today. But if you compare that to Shansha, which is the stuff that like the ridiculous cosmic level stuff, the scale is at a point where it kind of stops making any physical sense.
Yeah, it's very hard to do mechanically.
It is. And I set myself the high bar of being able to do a playable version of the video game Ashura's Wrath. And even that game, although it was a video game, was largely just cutscenes were the really goofy stuff with quick time events. And I want to do something that's a lot crunchier than a quick time event. So it's going to be off the chain when I get there. But because I started with just normal people and I built up to the kind of goofy level that Lone Wolf Fist is, and I'm making it even goofier with this supplement, and All Above Heaven's going to be a degree of goofitude beyond that. I just wanted to set people's expectation that there's a reason it took me 6 years to design this.
So, and I guess before we get into it too, I'll also mention my Wuxia games, Righteous Blood, Ruthless Blade, and Wandering Heroes of Ogre are pretty well suited to the type of Wuxia that we're going to be talking about today.
Mm-hmm.
I thought of Ogre Gate a lot while watching this movie.
Yeah, Ogre Gate, there were techniques definitely taken from this movie in Ogre Gate, for sure. So we're talking about Swordsman Ii, which we'll get into in the podcast, also known as The Legend of the Swordsman. It's a 1992 Hong Kong Wuxia film, loosely adapted from the Jin Yong novel Smiling Proud Wanderer. In the story, Ling Huchong decides to hide from the chaotic world. Before leaving, he visits his friends, a tribe of snake-wielding women warriors. However, he finds that the tribe have been attacked and their leader has been abducted. Now, I want to say, that's from the IMDb. That is an awful, awful breakdown.
It really is.
What we do with these is we take the IMDb breakdown and we use them. And part of the reason why is because They're so often, it's almost like the person didn't see the movie. This, I think the person saw the movie, but just wasn't paying a lot of attention. So there's like one woman who we really see using the snakes, right? And they're not a tribe. It's a cult, and it's not an all-woman group. It's just that there are two women that are really important in the group as characters at this point in the story. And so yeah, it's the breakdown is horrible, but I should mention, this is a Ching Swee Tung movie. He's a really great director. He did Duel to the Death. He did Witch from Nepal. He's done a lot of great films like A Chinese Ghost Story. And it was also produced by Choi Hark. And the action direction was Ching Swee Tung, Yuan Bun, and I think a few more people as well. There's a number of people credited on the action directing list. So again, this was a classic movie from 1992. My first encounter with this was when it was brought here as Legend of the Swordsman, and the film was cut down. It's a little bit different. It's definitely, after I saw that, eventually I saw Swordsman 2, and I realized, oh, this is part of a trilogy. But when it first came here, I had no idea. They didn't market it as a trilogy, and I just assumed it was a one-off movie. But for me, this has always been in my top 5 wuxia films. It's just one of those movies where it's a very definitive film, I find, for the genre, at least for me. I know that Joel, you had seen it before, but I believe Adam, this was your first time watching it. So I'm curious what Adam's reaction was to it before we get to Joel's opinion.
Okay, yeah, I love this movie. I mean, you were just talking about Ogre Gate. I'm getting ready to run Ogre Gate now. So I've been watching nothing but wuxia movies for the last few months. So this was, in fact, the second Jin Yong adaptation I watched this week. I watched The Sword with Royal Blood a few nights ago. I was like, you never mentioned this was a Jin Yong adaptation. I'm like, hey, this is Jin Yong. I mean, even without looking it up, it's like, it's so obvious. But I really love this movie. It has that Jin Yong thing I like, which I like it just in movies in general, but it's great for RPG material where there's just a world. It's like it feels like there's so much going on, beyond this story. It feels like, you imagine it being the second part of a trilogy. It's like, it just feels like this could go on in other directions. You could follow other characters and other things are happening. It's just that the action's fantastic. The acting is brilliant. It's a beautiful movie. I really have nothing but good things to say about it. It's one of those things where I didn't get around to watching it till very late last night, and I was tired the whole way through. The subtitles were a little sketchy, which is usually a problem, especially when you're tired. But no, I was just so into this movie. Those obstacles weren't a problem at all. This is just a top tier action movie, top tier wuxia. Just a great movie. I loved it overall. So, Joel.
All right, so I'm going to tell you why this movie is garbage. No, I'm kidding. It's a joke. I had to. It's hard to find anything that's wrong with this movie. I think that's probably, because what's wrong? It's got an amazing cast. They all turn in fantastic performances. The action is breathtaking. And not only is it really beautifully choreographed, it's also shot in a way, and it uses effects in a way, like this is a very wire fu movie that consistently does something that you've never seen before and I've rarely seen again. So
in fact, just to stop you, you can see the wires in the Blu-ray version I have because it's so clear that the wires are visible in certain scenes. Go ahead.
Fair enough. Yeah, I wasn't able to see them this time, and I was really impressed with that. But again, I was watching it on, I think it was Tubi I was watching it on. The resolution isn't great there. But yeah, the story, I could tell from the structure, and maybe it's because I've watched a lot of wuxia, that this was part of an ongoing thing. I didn't know if it was the second movie or the first movie. I mean, it's called Swordsman 2, so I knew it was the second movie. But it could have easily been the first movie, but referencing something that happened in The Return of Condor Heroes. because that's such a cultural touchstone that you sort of don't need to go over it again.
Well, it shares a character. The swords master, what's his name? Dugu, I think his name is.
Yeah.
It shares a character. Like he's not a character in the story, but he's an important background personality.
Yep. And again, it's because Return of Condor Heroes is such a cultural touchstone that you don't. It's like the Superman origin story. You don't have to go over it in every movie where you have a new Superman. We know where Superman came from. All right. Same thing here. Like, we know where those characters came from. When you reference them, like, oh, okay, no, it's Return of Condor Heroes. So it has that kind of energy, but it also leaves off in a place where it's very wuxia ambivalent. This could have been the last movie. And so, like, for me, like, I understand it's part of an ongoing story, but I also understand that's such a bedrock of how wuxia stories are told that, like, so the movie on its own, you don't need to surround it with other movies for it to be perfectly cohesive in the type of storytelling that's doing, right? So I can't really consider that a complaint. I guess you could see like the kind of Dutch angle, very like in your face 90s tilt the camera constantly style of filmmaking is a little bit frantic, but it works so beautifully for the way this movie paces itself that I can't. I mean, like, that was irritating in the first Thor movie because it didn't work with the really flat kind of directing they had. But here, it's so fluid. It's so kinetic. There's so much movement between scenes. Nobody ever just walks from one scene to another. They're always, like, heroically riding a horse or leaping with, like, wire fu. It's the only time that it goes from scene to scene with nobody literally leaping into a Dutch angle is when it smash cuts from day to night. Like, this movie is way too kinetic to be contained in like a standard framing. It has to be shot this way. So I can't think of a single flaw with this film, and that's pretty high praise.
I really like the Dutch angle 90s wuxia stuff. I feel like it gives it that kinetic quality, but it also gives it a dreamlike quality that makes it just transports you someplace else. And also it does something with the framing of the shots because they really have to think. Even there's like one scene where they're just putting swords away, but just the angle that it's shot at, just kind of interesting. You know, it just sort of like you just sort of just tell the way that the movie is framed because of the angles and stuff. And then when they do frame something a little bit more standard, it kind of stands out more as a result. So, you know, I'm a big fan of that. So you mentioned the movie. So I haven't seen the first movie in some years. I got it on like Blu-ray when I eventually tracked it down somewhere and I watched it. And I remember enjoying it, but I also remember it not being nearly as good to me as this movie. And I also have seen the third film probably about 3 or 4 times. I've seen that more than the first one, and that one's very entertaining. It's a really good movie. But my other memory of it, and that one is all about the Dongfeng Bubai character, and Bridget Lin is like the star of that movie. So if you liked Dongfeng Bubai in this, you get plenty of Dongfeng Bubai in the next film.
I did.
Yeah. It's definitely worth seeing for that reason. But I also am pretty sure, and I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that the story is very different from the novel in the third. I think they basically just go and almost make a whole other storyline out of the Dongfeng Bubai character. But it's still, I mean, there's like ninjas on kites flying in the air. There's a lot of really cool stuff. Like this one has the ninjas on the big giant throwing stars that are spinning through the air. They kind of like are like, okay, we gotta do that, but better. So they got ninjas on kites, and it's also more set in the ocean, the third one. So the third one has kind of a it's like Pirates of the Caribbean, but better in my opinion. You know what I mean? And the third one I think has Joey Wong. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong, but I think Joey Wong is in that movie as well. So it's just a really good film. But this one is the movie that I think maybe because it came out as Legend of the Swordsman in the US and we didn't know about the other ones, is the one that had the most impact. And due to that, I can't shake it from my mind. But I also feel like this film really hinges a lot on Jet Li's performance and Bridget Lin's performance as Dongfeng Bubai. So I think those two things just make it a really special movie. And again, having Ching Sui Tung. The first movie, by the way, was originally directed by King Hu.
Really?
But I guess I heard different things, so I'm sort of speculating here. I don't want to sound like I'm saying what exactly happened, but what I heard was he was filming it too slowly for Choi Hark's liking, that Choi Hark liked to make things in a faster timeline, that there were maybe some disagreements, and that he, I think, got frustrated and quit. And I know that he died not that long after as well, so he probably wasn't in the best of health. But
they do have pretty different styles, so I can see that not meshing.
Well, and I remember the first one is different, but it also had like 6 directors on it as a result of him leaving. So Choi Hark is a director. There's like a bunch of other people that were directing the first movie. But anyways, this movie is really good. And one of the things that I like about it is it kind of reminds me of Ronnie Yu's Bride with White Hair.
That's a good comparison.
Yeah, and so so I feel like again, I think this one came out like I think this was actually a year before The Bride with White Hair. I could be wrong, but I feel like those two movies together, like Swordsman II and Bride with White Hair, are there's to me they sort of form like a core part of Bridget Lynn's catalog that I really like. And so I think you can see, like in Ogre Gate, you can clearly see there's like a Bride with White Hair and a Swordsman II element to them that's very obvious. And so
I felt like I found a missing piece here for getting ready to run Ogre Gate watching this, definitely.
Well, even stuff down to like having the sword strokes that split people in half and things like that. Which again, I think there's some of that in Duel to the Death too. That's the other thing is, I don't know the history of this very well, so I'm not sure how accurate this is. But my impression has always been that Ching Sui Tung, he's kind of like a dividing line in my mind between Shaw Brothers like 60s and 70s style wuxia, and then that style that evolves in the 80s into the 90s, where you eventually have all the Dutch angles and all this stuff that we sort of associate with the heavy wire fu and all that. Duel to the Death came out in the early 80s, and it definitely, I mean, again, there probably are movies earlier than that, but I feel like he's one of these directors that, because, you have Duel to the Death, and then you also have movies like Swordsman II and A Chinese Ghost Story, I just so heavily associate him with that 80s, 90s wuxia style.
To cut in a moment, to show how much I enjoyed this movie, I ordered Duel to the Death on Blu-ray this morning. I was like, I gotta buy that.
Oh, so have you not seen Duel to the Death yet?
No, I've never seen it. I heard you guys in the chat talking about it.
Joel, have you seen it?
I gotta pick that
up. You and me did a thing on it for Wuxia Workshop, I believe. I love Duel to the Death, dude. Adam, you're in for a treat, man. That's a great movie.
Duel to the Death is a special movie. It's a really good film.
I'm excited.
He's a very reliable director. There's a lot, like, you can go down his catalog, and I mean, again, like all directors, some are better than others, but he's got a lot of really good films. And I think like all of his, like Swordsman II, Duel to the Death, and Chinese Ghost Story all had massive influences on, on anything that I've done gaming wise. So, he's a very, this is just another important ingredient for me. But yeah, so what about the kung fu and the martial arts of this movie? Did you guys, notice watching it? And I guess, Joel, for you, this would be your second time, so it might be. It
is. I really noticed how much the main swordsman, the Jet Li character, called out every attack name before he launched it.
Everybody was calling out their attack. A lot of them were.
I think he just had a big repertoire of techniques, and so I loved that. I love that he's like, I'm about to kill you with this particular move. That stood out a lot to me.
A lot of movies do that, and I think it's a good. And sometimes people make fun of it because it sort of sounds, especially I think when you see it in stuff like anime, it sort of makes it even look more over the top. But the reason I like it in wuxia is because if you're reading like a wuxia novel, there'll be like a paragraph explaining the technique that the guy is using. Yes. You know what I mean? And so the movie can't do that, but having them say the name gives you a sense of like the depth of their martial arts, and like that they also have this signature ability that they, it gives it that character.
I mean, I was talking about Jin Yang books earlier. It's like this being a Jin Yang book. There is the world building in Jin Yang, and that feeling of a world extends to the techniques they're using. Yeah. It's not just people doing cool moves. There is a system to the martial arts. So being able to underline that, even if it's not quite realistic, it adds to it. It's something that's in the book.
Well, this is a movie, like when I first saw it, I'm sure I thought all this stuff is random. Do you know what I mean? Because I didn't know anything about wuxia. I didn't know anything about Jin Yong. And I think a lot of people think that. And some people, they're never going to like we used to call these flying swordsman movies. We didn't even call them wuxia movies back when I, first was exposed to them. And and I'm sure there are plenty of other names that they get called, wire fu or whatever. There are people who will not watch these movies for whatever reason. And one of the reasons they often give is it's too unrealistic. It looks like they're just making up as they go along. And the thing I always like to tell people is that there are principles of like lightness kung fu and internal chi cultivation, in external martial arts. And those are the things that explain the stuff that looks just like magic to us on the surface has like an explanation that gives it more grounding. But also the stuff that Adam is saying, the novels that they're based on, and sometimes even if it's just a movie that's not based on a novel, there's a system. There's like an understanding that the character has acquired the skill, from somebody that they were training. It's not like it just fell from the sky into their hands and they became good at it. The sword technique that we see Ling Hucheng using, he in the book, and there's been a number of TV series. The most recent one was, I think, 2013 Swordsman, which is pretty good. I would recommend it, but it deviates wildly from the book. So don't watch it expecting to know the content of the novel, but it's still, I thought, a pretty entertaining series. But in that show and in the book, I think he spends like a year in a cave where he stumbles upon he stumbles on it written on the wall as like a manual, like through figures, if I remember, and he masters it over time that way. So it's this technique. By the time you see him using it later in the story, you have an understanding of what it is, and it's just
the learning and passing on of the moves is so important. These are the same people that like they have no problem with superheroes flying all around with no explanation, but it's like, these guys could do it and they just have swords. It's like, no, dude, there's a comprehensive system for how all this stuff works. It all has a shared mythology. And like one of the most famous one in my estimation is probably the one in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, where they have that secret manual that the main villainess stole, but she can't read. She's illiterate, so she just copies down the moves and becomes a master that way. But the actual student of that guy she killed was taught and knows all the writing, so he has this deeper understanding of it. So his kung fu is superior. Like you can't just say it fell out of the sky. Come on, man. It's central to the way those characters work.
Yeah, and I mean, and if people still don't like it because of the aesthetics or whatever, that's fine. It's just my point is just that it's not random, and it has sensibilities that all internally make sense. And also the thing about it too is this is the kind of movie where it's just like the beauty of the action is really hard to miss. It's like everything from how they set up a shot where they have like the guys in the courtyard, right, where the governor is issuing his execution decree, and so you see them pan over and you get this sense of this powerful guy, and he like powerfully says like, I'm going to execute them if they don't do whatever, and then his man goes forward, and the moment his man goes forward and starts talking, his voice is more diminutive, talking to the guy and relaying the message that he's given, and then the guy explodes with this sword strike that just splits people in half, and then people are flying through the air, and it's graceful, it's violent, it's just like a dance choreography but with blood. And I
good way of putting it.
Yeah, I find that very entertaining and enjoyable to watch.
It is a ballet of ass kicking. Yes.
Well, it takes a lot of physical skill for all the actors to do even if they're not like, you can tell when you watch a movie like this, some of them have really deep training. Like Jet Li is obviously a long time martial artist. Some might not have quite as much and some might have more or less, but whatever their skill level, it takes a lot of physical, ability and training and discipline to do what they're doing on the screen. It takes a lot of work with the camera to make it look right so it doesn't look stupid, because if you just sit out in a field and do all the stuff Jet Li is doing, it's not going to look nearly as good as when you splice it all together. Do you know what I mean?
I gotta say, as someone that's only gotten into this genre over the last 10 years, it's like one of the things that's refreshing is like you're saying, Jet Li is a great martial artist. It's just, it's after watching so many CGI movies and stuff, it's like, it is just fun to watch these movies where there's this really deep physical skill underneath what everybody is doing.
And also how they express the character through their physical, not just in terms of the fighting, but like the, what was the character's name? Was it Blue Phoenix? Is she the one with the whistle? When Blue Phoenix is leaning back on the porch and playing the whistle, she moves like somebody who's like a dancer or an athlete who is just so in command of their body and so comfortable moving that she gets into this weird, like, it's this very interesting stance that she takes when she's playing the flute. It's not a martial move or anything like that, but moments like that in the film, again, if you appreciate human movement and people's ability to control, like, just like how their body looks when it's put in a certain pose or whatever, I find that very interesting as well. And also down to like the Bridget Lynn performance. I don't know. I always get confused if it's Bridget or Brigitte, but Bridget Lynn is what I usually call her.
We'll go with Bridget Lynn.
But yeah, I think Bridget would probably be right.
Okay, I've heard people debate this. That's why.
Well, I'm guessing just because Bridget is the more British pronunciation, and this is a Hong Kong movie, I'm saying it's probably Bridget. Because Brigitte is more of a French kind of thing. So
okay.
I'm totally speculating, so people are right to correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, if anybody knows, yell it at him in the comments. And we'll,
exactly.
Yeah, it's all out of fault.
I'm gonna post my email in the comments on this so that you can contact me directly. My home address too.
So all those rabid Bridget Lynn fans can attach.
www.IHateFrenchPronunciation.com.
But even like her, like the physical nature of her performance, like obviously there are other elements to it, but how the actors are able to convey important information to us, with I would say fairly subtle I mean, sometimes they're over exaggerated expressions in order to make a point. But it's subtle in the sense of this is a vision. Like the thing I like about these movies is they have an element to them that's closer to silent film than to say like an American action movie, where the actors are not just acting with their voice, they're acting with their whole body. In fact, a lot of times you don't even hear the actor's voice because it's, you're getting a person in a studio doing the voice, or it might be the actor later doing the voice. But they're using their body, they're using their facial expressions, and I don't know. I find the way that they communicate in these movies to be more entertaining, more emotionally moving, and more convincing than a lot of other types of films that feature this amount of action.
It pays, like it makes it, the rawness of all the physical scenarios they find themselves in feel more real when they have a more, they're able to convey with these stronger expressions, right? Like you wouldn't be super subtle, like no theater whenever you're in the middle of a sword fight. You'd probably be a little exaggerated if nothing else is to be heard over the clash of swords, right? But it's amazing that they not only do that, but they also make it more entertaining. I think you got a good point there. It is more rewatchable to see this movie just because I'm enjoying what I'm looking at more. I'm enjoying the expressiveness. I'm enjoying the movement.
To give you an example, like the scene when he's in the lake where he meets Dong Feng Bubai and Brigitte Lin is doing like her, martial arts in the water. And
cool.
And she's not talking because she still has a man voice and she doesn't want him to know that she's a man. But the way that she's like, that's actually one of my favorite moments in that scene. Has nothing to do with action. It's just when she drinks the wine and throws the wine bottle to him and sort of stands in like this, like, I don't know what you would call the posture, but it's like this very kind of confident but flirty posture.
Yeah.
It's just an enjoyable scene. I don't even know why I like the scene, but I know that it's compelling. And I find that that's a feeling I have with a lot of movies like this, where I don't even know why I like that this person's wearing this costume and they're standing the way they are. But that is like really captivating me way more than if they were like saying 18,000 words right now and telling me everything that was inside of them.
Yeah, it's a way of doing storytelling where the art of the whole thing is the uniqueness of the whole thing is conveyed in this really satisfying way. Yeah, it's hard to put your finger on what that is, but I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's the best I can do, and I'm sure there is probably language for it that's just, we don't have access to, is that silent movie comparison. I get the same feeling that I get when I'm watching like Nosferatu or something, and it's like something about the physical performance is important. And it's not, which isn't to say they look like silent movie actors, but that the physical performance is important, not just for the action, but for all of the different exchanges that are going on.
Yeah, there's a certain theatrical conveyance, I guess is what I would term it as, that they have, that you're right. Yeah, it's reminiscent of that kind of silent movie acting. Man, what a comparison. Only your brain could do that, Brendan.
I'm sure other people have made that comparison, but it really works for me. And I think and also the what is it? There's the scene where you have Candy Ewan, Candice Yu, playing Cece, Dong Fang Bubai's first lover in the movie, right? And just the way that she's like holding the gun when she's shooting at the gun, just little things like those little details. Like, it looks like it's not planned, but because she's a veteran Shaw Brothers actress and all this, that it's very intentional, everything that she's doing. Or when she falls back into Dong Fei Bubai's arms and Dong Fei Bubai sort of pulls back the robe and, reveals that that's where like the manual is being kept. And it's all, like you're saying, very theatrical. And
it conveys this idea that she is part of a plurality. Like she's kind of thinks of herself as the other half, and her body motions convey that. She's meant to complete Dong Feng Bubai, and she's having this crisis of identity because he's not the same person he was when he first picked up that secret manual.
Well, let's talk about the love triangle, because that is the interest. Number one, I mean, Candice Yu, she's a veteran actor, and she kind of gets bottom billing in the Wikipedia page, but I think she's really important because that character commits suicide, and that suicide is like essential for the whole story that they're telling to make sense. But
she is a very memorable and very critical supporting character. I'm sad she got bottom billing. That's crap.
But
it's a double love triangle story too. I mean, that's the thing. You've got that early love story going on with Jet Li, with Lingo Chong and so on. And it's, there's just a lot going on as far as that stuff, and it all works. It doesn't become overcomplicated or ridiculous. It just all fits.
Yeah. So before we get into the love triangle, I guess we should mention Li Hu Chung is a womanizer and an alcoholic, basically. He likes to drink and he likes to womanize, and he's going into seclusion, but he makes a point that he's not going to become a monk, that he's just going into seclusion to escape from the chaos of the world. And so I love that we'll get to the love triangle, but one thing I don't want to forget to talk about is sort of the song. I think it's called Hero of Heroes. I can't remember, but the song is all about like the chaos of the world that they're in, and but they're using heaven and the sea as like these sort of framing devices, and how the heavens are laughing at us because we don't know what our fate is. We don't know how all this is going to pan out, and you kind of see that by the end when the leader of the Sun Moon cult reclaims his position and just starts executing people. Do you know what I mean? And it's sort of like all the people that didn't know that was coming to them. Those are the people that you can assume that verse of the line of the song is referring to. But I like the idea of this character who's it's all, I don't know. I don't know it's quite this way in the book, but in the movie, the kind of sense you get of him is that is part of what is sort of driving him to sort of, I don't know, maybe womanize and drink is a way to sort of deal with the chaos of the world that he's living in, which is, there is like all this turmoil. And so he's just, he just would rather, sort of, again, sort of, laugh and drink and, be merry, it seems. And so it's a very
naive kind of way of doing stuff. And there's a line in the movie where he's talking about that to someone, and they're like, look, it takes one generation for that kind of thinking to completely vanish, and then we're right back into the chaos. Like, that's the nature of humankind. So
I think he knows that. I think the thing that makes the character have weight is that he's singing this song because the song is kind of a lament of the human condition in this circumstance. And the drinking is sort of how he's sort of escaping from it in a way. You know what I mean? Like it's because I mean, there's a wistfulness in the character. There's like a wistfulness in him when he's and I think that also kind of explains his attraction to the Dongfeng Bubai character too. Do you know what I mean?
And Dongfeng Bubai's attraction back, but because again, this is a character that is so deep into the conflict of drama that's going on, to the power struggle, that they've literally changed their body, like to do the supreme martial arts. So like, it's not just. There's a lot of it. This is a very human interaction. It's not just the romance part of it. And there's clearly a blossoming romance. There's also this thing where he represents a kind of freedom and lightheartedness that is like more or less impossible for Dong Bang to actually have. It's borne out as the events of the movie play out. But like, God, it's so good. Damn it, Brendan, I love this movie.
Yeah. I love the line he has when he's talking to Dongfeng Bubai. It's like, oh, for people like us, we we're not attached to all this. Like he totally doesn't understand Dongfeng Bubai at all. I mean, that's just a great ironic line.
Yeah, it's funny because his drinking is almost a form of detachment from the world, right? Like it's almost the thing that like helps him to sort of be at ease, and he's not really depicted as like a drunken, boxer. It's not like, the drunken master type of thing. He's more of just like the drinking is more part of his personality than
he's kind of tired of the world. I mean, because that's the thing at the ending when you have the reveal, it's like, oh, now we've got this new guy and everything's just as bad. It's like, it's not like he's shocked. It's not like, oh, the scales have fallen from my eyes, my purity. It's like, okay, there you go.
Yeah. He's exiled to Japan at the end of the movie. It's
it's like, all right, time to move on.
A place famous for its womanizing and drinking. Good luck, dude.
But to the love triangle, I think that it's interesting that like Dongfeng Bubai has this the Candice Yu character who's I think Cece is her name, and she's very deeply in love with Dongfeng Bubai, but Dongfeng Bubai has lost interest in her essentially by the time the movie starts. Like she's still emotionally connected to Cece, but there's no it seems like Dongfeng Bubai has now become more of a woman now and is more interested in men or whatever. And then you have the meeting of Dongfeng Bubai with Ling Hu Chung, and that sort of turns into it's not like they become an item. It's more like they're sort of like crossing ships in the night is more how I would think of them, like, or passing ships in the night, like they're
circling each other.
Yeah. And so, but it's interesting because you can see the moment when Dongfeng Bubai falls in love with Ling Hu Chung. And again, I think that's, the interesting part of Bridget Lin's acting is just sort of how well that's conveyed, where it's like, okay, I can sort of see what's going on here. And also the way that they consummate the relationship is Cece is like the surrogate, and Dongfeng Bubai basically tricks Ling Hu Chung into thinking that he's having sex with Dongfeng Bubai, but he's actually having sex with Cece. And then it becomes this like lingering, ambiguous thing that is driving Ling Hu Chung crazy by the end of the movie, because he doesn't know whether he slept with Dongfeng Bubai or not. And so, it's just a very interesting love triangle. And then again, like Adam was saying, there's also the fellow disciple from his own school and the Rosamund Kwan character, the Ren Yingying, who in the book, that's who he ends up with, if I remember, is her. So if you guys were fans of that relationship, I remember in the book they end up being together in the end. So you can be happy with that. Unfortunately, what's her name? Yu Lingshan, she doesn't make it. But that's. But there's the story in the book is a lot more complicated, and so there's a good reason why she doesn't make it. But yeah, so I don't know. Did you guys have any other thoughts on that portion of the story?
No, I think that's all I got on that.
What part were we talking about exactly? We were kind of just circling around Dongfeng.
The love triangle, the Dongfeng. So basically the relationship between Ling Hu Chung and Dongfeng Bubai.
Okay. Let's see. I like how many people get involved in this triangle in the air quotes.
Yeah.
Because he's a womanizer, as you stated. And so he doesn't realize that with Dongfeng Bubai, he's kind of roped in two people, and he already had, was it 2 or 3 women that were clearly interested in him? One of which he was like directly, like very much in love with, but like the circumstances were kind of impossible. The daughter of the guys in charge of Sun and Moon sect. What is her name? Darn, I can't remember.
Oh, Ren Ying.
Yeah, her. Yeah, I want to say, so we kind of have this love 3-dimensional rhombus looking thing.
It's a bow tie.
He's in love with her, and then little brother is she's clearly got a thing for him. Then like he's got a fling, like an interest in Dongfeng Bubai, and then he sleeps with Dongfeng's lover, who kills herself and then doesn't know that he didn't sleep with her. It's like so convoluted, and yet I literally just described for you every single chunk of it. It's so clear in the movie, despite being this horrible tangled mess. I love that.
And what that all sets up is the emotional weight of the final battle at the end, when Bridget Lin is legitimately hurt that he's like attacked, even though he has she killed all of the, she slaughtered his martial brothers, right? Like it's amusing to me that she's like got no sense of culpability at all when he accuses her of that. She's like, I didn't do anything wrong. I can't remember exactly what she said, but she clearly doesn't feel like she's done anything wrong, and she clearly feels like she's the wronged person because they had a thing and he's now attacking her, and she's kind of
Oh, I think that's something that Jin Yong's really good at, is creating these villains who just have so much depth to them that you almost forget at times, like, oh yeah, this person's the villain. And
we always they have an emotional world that feels real inside.
Yeah.
I mean, that's even like Lee Mocho in Return of Condor Heroes. Yeah. She's like the most horrible person in the world that you can imagine, but she has there's like an internal thing with her that actually makes a certain amount of sense. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and some of her
Huang Yaoshi, there's another one. Huang Yaoshi is a great character.
So I think that in this case, again, I think the Bridget Lin performance really is what holds it together, and also the fact that the transformation, again, we haven't really explained, maybe for people listening that haven't seen the movie, Dongfeng Bubai is mastering, in the movie it's called the Sacred Manual. I think in the book it was the Willow Manual, and he's mastering this thing, but in order to do it, it was developed by a eunuch, so you have to castrate yourself at some point during the training. And also just the cultivation of this technique slowly makes you more feminine. And so the idea is, over the course of the film, Dongfeng Bubai is becoming more womanly until so when we first see Dongfeng Bubai, he's still kind of feminine, but more. There's a little bit like the posturing is more manly. He's more stiff. He's more in command. But then when they face him at the end, he's like literally weaving with sewing needle. And we do see him doing some of that earlier in the film, but it's the character is just more of a woman by the final scene. And so the completion of that transformation makes for a really interesting final battle when you have just all of these characters going up against this character who's essentially just fighting with a needle and thread, which, or in some instances, multiple needles and threads. It's a really stunning fight scene. And the weapons, I think, are really creatively used too. What's interesting to me is Dongfeng Buai has these feminine sewing needles, and what's his name? Ren Wojing has these meaty hooks that are all they're similar weapons. Do you know what I mean? They're both essentially sharp hooked weapons. But his are more masculine, hers are more feminine. And also there's all this banter going on in this, like Dongfeng Bubai is sort of expressing her love to Ling Hu Chung. Ling Hu Chung is confused because he's learning who Dongfeng Bubai is. The other characters are confused because they're discovering that Ling Hu Chung has slept with Dongfeng Bubai. and Ren Wujing is amused by the whole thing. He's just laughing the whole way through the conflict. He just finds it hysterical. So
I also find it hysterical. I'm with him.
Well, and it's consistent because even when he reads the manual, he starts laughing when he realizes
he's cackling about its implications. Yeah,
because he's like, oh, he had to castrate himself to do this. So there's just the atmosphere of the final fight is like funny, moving. It's action. It just has like so many different things woven into it.
I mean, it's so many action movies. It's like you're just watching the final fight, waiting for the hero to punch out the villain once and for all. And it's like there's so much interactive drama going on in this fight at the end.
I don't know what I wanted to happen. That's a wonderful place to be as an audience member, where you're so conflicted by how much you love these characters that you're like, I kind of didn't want them to fight.
Because you kind of want everybody to get what they want in that final scene, right? Like, and they can't. They're all in complete opposition to one each other. Like, there's no way they can't all achieve their goals here. At least in terms of love. Maybe in terms of killing Dongfeng Bubai, they could all achieve their goals. But every character has something they want, and it all is kind of in conflict with other characters. And also, I think, again, for me, the best wuxia movies always have that emotional weight to them. So, like, this is pretty far afield from what we're watching, but a movie like Killer Klans, it has this emotion. It's as crazy of a movie it is. There's this emotional component that really pays out in the end. And here it's the same thing. The thing that makes it satisfying is the emotional catharsis in the end sequence. And so, again, I think it's just, all those things that we were talking about before really go into making that work. So I like the scene on the cliff. They sort of start in a courtyard, and you almost don't realize they're on the edge of a cliff. And then the battle migrates to the outer wall, and that's where Dongfeng Bubai meets her end. As she's, but it's done in, again, Ling Hu Chung is still like desperate to know whether he's stuck with her or somebody else, and she refuses to tell him. But also, I think in the end, I think Dongfeng Bubai gets what she wants, because I think she wants Ling Hu Chung to love her, and I think him leaping down to ask that final question kind of gives her the satisfaction that she was looking for.
You're not sure why he's asking the question during the fight. At first, it seems like he's trying to deny that he's effectively slept with a man. But at the end of it, it seems like he's asking, did we consummate our true love? Which is a very different way of asking the same question. And I love that. It's brilliant.
You don't know. You still, because I've watched this movie a lot, and every time I watch it, that's like the question I'm trying to answer is Ling Hu Chung disturbed, and that's why he's asking it? Or is he in love with Dongfeng Bubai, and that's why he's asking the question? He wants to know if they've if they've achieved consummation in the relationship. And I think that ambiguity is what makes it very interesting. And also, again, that emotional weight. But just that look on Bridget Lynn's face when she falls, you get the impression that she is convinced that he's in love with her, and that's why she pushes him back and continues her, I don't know, her death crawl into the sea.
Is she wearing a wedding dress? I'm trying to think, because I thought that wedding dresses, like the traditional Chinese wedding dress, was red. Oh, I thought they were white, and then the inside was red, and then you would flip it around.
I don't know about that detail.
Okay.
No, and I like the fact too that the whole consummation thing, whatever happened, it's like, the fact that Cece being that it's not just it's a diversion for Dongfeng Bubai to go kill all of his friends. Yeah, that's like a whole other level to it too. It's like the fact he was distracted by that is that's what killed basically everyone he knew almost. But it's again, and the movie is so, because this time I was typing out all the events as they had, because it's a movie where it's one of these films where the first time you watch it almost feels like it takes place in one place. Do you know what I mean? I don't know why. It just feels almost more like a Marshall Hangout movie at first. And then you realize that they're actually going to a lot of different locations, and there's a lot of but as I was writing out all of okay, this happened, then this happened, then I realized how tightly woven all of those plot details were. And I think the one that Adam just mentioned is the one that really highlights that.
he's
it's betrayal on so many different levels there. It's like he's betraying Dong Fang by betraying Cece by making her do that, betraying Lingu Chang by tricking him, and yeah, it's just it's such good drama.
And that's almost where that's like where the movie is all happening in a way. Like everything, that scene when she goes out and starts killing people, that's like you can feel the music amping up. Everything kind of amps up and becomes like this really intense moment. And you have all these characters who often in earlier scenes were like more silly. They were more lighthearted characters, meeting horrible deaths. Like the death of Blue Phoenix, I think, is one of the most moving ones because she's kind of a playful, fun character through most of it. It's like somebody murdering Cyndi Lauper or something. Do you know what I mean? It's just like you just don't want to think about it. It's too awful, you know. So
Scumbag gets cut in half too. Oh, Scumbag.
The Marshall brothers all get just blown to smithereens.
Yeah, they're like comedic characters, and then like they such a gut-wrenching, terrible way of dying when they get lopped into pieces. It's just like then they have to bury them in this heart-wrenching scene, and you're like, okay, I see why they're out for blood when they go for the showdown with Dong Fang Bu-Bai.
Yeah, it's raining. The grave is filling up with water as they're pouring the bodies in. They're erecting the headstones. It's a really well done. That just the pacing of the movie and the way that it's edited is really good. And again, that's something that I think I probably missed because in the when I first saw it when it was Legend of the Swordsman, that was a very different edit of the movie, and I don't remember exactly. I'd have to watch it again to kind of compare. But I feel like I didn't get a full Also, that one looks like crap too, so that was another thing. No, because the thing is, it wasn't until I saw this movie on Blu-ray that I realized it was a stunning movie visually. When I first saw it, it was like grainy and faded and nothing looked good, and I don't even think that it was cropped properly. You know, it just had all kinds of issues. And then when I forget when I got it, but when I got the Blu-ray, I got a Korean Blu-ray of it, and it was night and day. But yeah, so and I guess the ending scene too is worth talking about. We kind of touched on it a little bit, but that scene where Ren Wu Jing is he's lost his eye in the fight. He got stitched up with all the sewing needles, and now he's back in charge of the Holy Sun Moon cult, and he's just basically putting people in the chopping block. It's like it's a purge. It's like a classic purge scenario. But it just creates this, like you guys were saying earlier, this grim sense of just how chaotic and in turmoil this world is, that people are at the mercy of powers well beyond them. But yeah, I don't know. Any other thoughts? I don't remember if there were topics that we didn't touch on yet.
So how much of that do you want to attribute to like being locked up for how was it, 12 years he was locked up, and how much do you want to attribute to that just being the nature of the world? Like, was he warped by his circumstances into turning into a monster?
We'll just go by the movie for the purposes of it. We'll just deal with the movie and not be informed by other media. I would say in this movie, I feel like it's a little bit of both. I feel like having meat hooks in you and being locked up like that is going to definitely give you a bitterness that is going to want to be vented. Also, when he came out, he discovers that like so many of his men betrayed him. So I think he had valid, I don't think is justified in killing all these people, but he had valid concerns about loyalty in his organization, we can say. And then, and then
the 10th year, I felt a little bit validated.
Yeah. But then I think also it's true. It's the nature of the world they live in. They live in a world where, basically might makes right. And he's, again, but I don't know that you can separate those two things, because the world is these characters and these organizations, and in this world he was betrayed by Dong Fang Bu-Bai, who took over his organization and imprisoned him. So that's, it makes total sense that he's going to just start killing people he doesn't trust. That might be the next Dong Fang Bu-Bai.
It goes back to that point that they make in the movie where it's like it takes all of one generation. Like the actions that we take now, that's what makes all the martial grudges. That's what makes these purges and revenges it necessitates them. So there's like it's basically impossible to escape the cycle. That's kind of the thesis of the movie when it comes to the tragic element of it.
Yeah, and that's why he's going into seclusion. That's why they want to retreat from the world because and again there was a whole movie before this where they saw the horrors of the world in their own sect and their own master sort of trying to seek out evil and just not showing himself to be an utter hypocrite. And so I think that it's and again it's an interesting theme too in the genre, just of sort of like I think the closest thing we can compare it to is like our mafia movies or our like street gang movies, you know what I mean, where you have this cycle of violence based on revenge and grudges and things like that. But yeah, this is definitely a movie where that's a core theme. And also it's not just grudges and revenge though. It's also just based on people trying to attain power. You know what I mean? Like, Dongfeng Mubai just there's more to it than that, but Dongfeng Mubai is trying to achieve power and is willing to betray the leader of the sect, is willing to transform his body, is willing to sacrifice his lover to achieve it, So, and again, I think what this movie does well is it humanizes that. It makes Dongfeng Mubai does all those things, but we see when Dongfeng Mubai's lover poisons herself, there's a real look of remorse in Dongfeng Bu's eyes over the consequences of using Cece as bait like that, or as a distraction. So I don't know. I guess the other thing too is, I know, Joel, you wanted to talk about the chi transformations that happen in this movie. There's at least two that I can spot right away, and even being like just very vaguely associated with like Taoist chi theory, which is what like underlies all this the martial cultivation stuff. Dongfeng Mubai's transformation is the obvious one, but again, the what do they call the bone locking that happens to the head of the sect, the former head of the sect. They put meat hooks through him, and I think they used them to lock his joints. I can't remember exactly what it was, or they might have just used a technique that locked his chi. A thing about chi theory is that it's an internal alchemy theory. It's kind of like the humors in the West, where like different melts of humors, they don't just change your body, they kind of change your soul. Like they change your internal state too. Mm-hmm. So like, it's interesting that they don't go into the details of how that works in this movie, but they do give you enough to kind of get what's going on. But it's fascinating because, like we were talking about earlier, where there's this deep body of myth that underlies all of this, and it just kind of bubbles up in these movies. Yeah.
And if this was your first and only wuxia movie, that would be so perplexing.
Yeah,
It's like, why is this guy completely insane and using his meat hooks and all that? It's like, well, okay, his chi has been altered after X amount of years being in this locked position, and it's kind of driven him crazy, So, yeah, I just wanted to touch on
because I guess
the
meat hooks were acting. So you're saying the meat hooks were acting as kind of like
they weren't a place that would mess,
needles, right?
Yeah,
like
exactly. They were messing with chi meridians, which is a Taoist feature. Again, it's kind of like humors where these magical lines of energy are going throughout your whole body, and they kind of pool in places. And you can there's a lot of stuff in this movie where someone will just like get poked and they'll freeze up. That's also an extension of that same principle, where it's like if you get poked in the wrong chi meridian, it screws with your internal harmony and you freeze up, or you have to move in a certain way, or you explode in a giant fountain of gore if you're doing Fist of the North Star. But yeah, it's all actually referencing the same Taoist manuals, which I think is really interesting.
And then he has the ability to draw people's chi energy into himself, and that's how he kind of repairs himself.
He can suck it right out.
And then the other chi transformation is obviously Dongfeng Mubai. That's the
one. There's one of the things that Taoism is really big on is the genderizing of elemental energy. There's basically you've seen the Tao symbol where it's like the yin and yang. It's that exact thing where certain attributes are considered masculine, certain are considered feminine, and that's more of a universal thing. It's a balanced, equal thing. It's not necessarily a condemnation of one or a promotion of the other, but certain internal styles in martial arts are seen as using that yang energy, that more feminine energy. And there's a lot, like even in the games that I based mine off of, there's a lot of talk about how there are certain martial manuals that basically you have to be one gender to use because of the way their magic works. And if you aren't, you turn into that gender. This is a sort of Taoist internal alchemy thing. So again, it's a very particular weird thing in the movie. And then when you look into it and you realize there's this huge body of mythology behind it, it's really interesting.
Well, and there's also even concepts of like male styles and female styles in general too. Like in Clan of the White Lotus, he has to master like a female style of martial arts in order to beat the not Pai Mei, but the guy that's like his successor. If I recall, but and it's kind of funny because he's Kara Huai is showing him all of the things, and so he kind of said it's Gordon Liu imitating her doing all of these very feminine things, and it's kind of played for humorous effect, you know. Because the idea is that
I gotta catch up. I gotta get to work here in a minute.
Oh, okay, all right.
I didn't realize what time it was.
Okay,
why don't we end it there then? You know, the summary is Swordsman 2 is a very good wuxia film. There's a big well of stuff to draw on for, you know, RPGs. If I'm assuming people paying attention to the channel, interested in RPGs.
And I can personally vouch for this being a great entry into the wuxia genre because it was mine. So how do you like that?
So,
6
highly
years
recommend
later, I'm still loving it. So yeah, excellent recommendation, Brendan, and a good way to cap off our last day of Fistmas, which is maybe not sequentially the last day, but close enough. We've been doing this until March. It's time to wrap it up.
And so, with that, we'll head out and we officially end our 12 days of Fistmas,
12-ish.
which I'm very happy about. And so we'll talk to you later.